Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
Broadcasting live from our Sanctum Sanctorum in Venice, California. This is the Sixth Sense Society. I'm your host, Krista, here with our producer, Michael. And today we welcome back to the show Craig Owens. And he is a paranormal investigator who likes to really dig into the history of places and find out the real stories behind hauntings. He's also an amazing photographer and a friend, and has been on the show. We're really excited to have him back by himself. He's been on our specials a couple times, our paranormal specials, but we haven't had him on the show, I think, for over a year or so. But before we get started with our interview, Michael has a few announcements.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our broadcast. Next week, we'll be taking a little bit of a break. Krista and I have to be elsewhere. And then we will be back in April with Spell It Out the first Tuesday, and we're planning all kinds of cool stuff. Shows on Freemasonry, and our good friend, witchcraft practitioner Renee Starr will be back, and we're talking about getting Lama Kathy back on. So lots of great shows coming up. So get all the information on our website, sixthsensesociety.com, SIXTH, all spelled out. And while you're there, if you can afford to, buy us a coffee on Ko-Fi, because it certainly helps us a little bit cover some of our production costs, and we do appreciate it. But the most important thing, click like and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube, or if you're listening as an audio podcast and you get a second to pop over to YouTube and like us, that really helps too. And you can sign up for a newsletter on our website, all kinds of cool stuff like that. So, and if you know anybody that might be a cool guest, or if you think you might like to be a guest on our show, reach out to us. We're always looking for some new people as well. So I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, so I'm going to kick it back to Krista. So take it away, Krista.
Thanks, Michael. And I forgot to mention something extremely important. He is the author of this beautiful book, Haunted by History, separating the facts and legends of 8 historic hotels and inns in Southern California, Volume 1. It's full of amazing historical research, as well as how he sets up his paranormal research and beautiful photographs. It's brilliantly done. I totally think you should buy it. I love it. It's really wonderful. And it's unusual because of the amount of work and dedication that went into it. So I wanted to give another shout out to it before we get started. So welcome, Craig.
Oh, well, thank you for having me back on. It's like really great to be back in the allegedly haunted Masonic Lodge.
Exactly.
where we first, did a live presentation, interview.
Yeah, that's right. And we've had like 4 different guests investigate at separate times the lodge, and it has been a lot of fun doing it,
Yeah, we investigated it once ourselves.
Yes. That was.
But you just recently came back into the studio, and this is my first time doing an interview in a studio. I mean, I'm so used to Zoom,
Yes.
That it's kind of like, you're in 3D now. It's like, it's pretty cool.
It is. You're our 3rd guest. And then there was someone came back, and then it shut down a little bit, the lodge, for the month of January. Then we had Holly. So, and then you're our 3rd. And Michael and I definitely prefer the in-studio. We like it.
I do too. So when you gave me that option, I just had to come down.
I'm really glad. I was listening to the previous show, which was about a year ago. We were actually in a lockdown during that time, and we talked about that. But you also shared that really tragic story about John in the Aztec Hotel, the man that you knew.
Yes. That was a sad moment. I mean, right now the Aztec Hotel is humming along pretty well. I mean, they're still not open as a hotel, but they've added more live music, like on Thursday nights, I think now, Friday night, Saturday, and then Sunday it's karaoke. So I don't really do tours too much during that time, although I do have a private tour. I will do a private tour if someone contacts me. But I've been working on getting the book out on the Aztec Hotel.
Also, you're going to have one just on the Aztec Hotel?
Yeah, it's going to be a standalone just to see what it'd be like, and as a kind of a fundraiser for the hotel as well, because I want them to open so that we can like get we can have more fun once it opens. And but right now, it's the back patio and the bar is mostly open. There has been an uptick in paranormal claims at the place.
Uptick since like how long ago? Like a year?
Since last time we talked, even.
Oh, wow.
I have a funny story to tell you on my last tour there. Oh my gosh. So I had about 30 people, and kind of going through all the different rooms that I'm allowed to take people in. And one of the rooms that I always go into is a room called 121, and it's across from the 120 haunted room. And I always what I like about it is it has the old 1920s jazz plastering, so you can just get dizzy looking at it. It's like it's almost like 1960s surreal, but it's just like configurations in the plaster, but on the ceiling. Great for matrixing, and seeing faces and whatnot in the texture. And then it's painted a dark color on top of all of that, so it makes it even weirder. But in 2003, there was a paranormal group that came through, and they claimed that this room was haunted. And it was one of those crazy investigations where they brought in like 5 psychics. And, I always say the more psychics you bring, the more ghosts you're going to find. And that's what they did.
But can they get along, the psychics?
The psychics didn't get along, and the ghosts that they found didn't get along too well either. But one of the claims that they had, now they had like a paranormal group following them with gadgets and stuff. But they came in and they said that this room 121, had a thought form haunting it. But this thought form was that of a serial killer that never became a serial killer,
it was just a
but
thought
wanted
form
to be a serial killer. So that negative serial killer thinking is in this room, as well as the ghost of a woman and the ghost of a gangster. And the owner had given me this report. It was like this thick, to look into it. So another investigator named Paul Griffith and I, we were at the Aztec, and we decided to check this claim because the room was empty at the time. And what it really was, the reason why they came up with the conclusion that it was a negative thought form is that as soon as they walked into the room, all of their EMF, gauge meters, and all that went, extremely to the needles were pinned and the lights were flashing. It was maxing out what these devices are allowed to even measure when it comes to electromagnetic fields and wiring and whatnot. And we noticed that too. You go about halfway into the room and it's, all the meters start going off. But what we discovered, there's nothing paranormal to it. The old wiring for the building is right behind one of the walls. And it was kind of hydrant-like because directly underneath was the circuit box. And the cables go up and then spread out. And so it was really just, and I don't understand why paranormal people don't look into that and be more responsible, rather than jumping to some kind of foregone weird conclusion about a thought. My editor, who of the book, who's Wiccan herself, she's like going, "That's not even what a thought form is. These people don't even know what a thought form is."
Yeah, I agree with that too.
And but we checked it out. It was just old wiring. But I had this group in, and I always show them, and I tell them this story as part of the room. And I even have a gauge meter, which I'll hold up to the wall, and because I try to teach as well what to look for if you're going to go paranormal investigating. You look for the wiring,
right,
and see if the needle is consistent. Then it means it's just wiring. There's nothing paranormal. It's normal for this room. So I did that, and then suddenly one of the young guys that were on the tour, he was in his 20s, I had just said, as far as I know, nothing paranormal has ever happened in this room. No sooner had I said that and was walking to the door, one of the people there fell face first on the floor. And he busted his nose. He didn't break it. He busted his nose and he busted a lip. And one of the ladies on the tours turned to me and said, well, something just happened now. And I started laughing. I mean, I was concerned about him. The tour it was at the end of the tour anyway, but that was a big bang to end the tour. Well, and he turned out to be okay. I mean, he sat in the bar and he said he had never had this happen before, to him, but I don't know his medical history.
Right.
He was a guest, but it made me realize, okay, I've got insurance, but I think I need to have waivers for moments like this too, because it was kind of frightening.
That's pretty dramatic, actually. I'm glad he was all right. That's
no, he
dramatic.
contacted me the next day. I mean, I was, I that's kind of why the tour ended, is that I needed to make sure he had, first aid, and he was with some friends, but, an ice pack and, making sure he didn't have a concussion before he opted to leave the tour. But that was the last, that happened on the last tour. Now, since then, weird things have happened. There have been moments where chandeliers have started swinging, or light fixtures. One of them is in the kitchen of the bar, and after one of my tours, the lights started swinging, and I've since asked them, has that started swinging since, and they said no, but it was doing it that night. And ironically, I think that's what ended the paranormal investigations that I was doing back in 2018, was that one of the chefs quit on the spot because one of the same light fixture in the kitchen started swinging on its own shortly after we did a paranormal investigation. So
could be psychokinesis too.
Could be. I actually think that the more I do history tours there, I think it may have something to do with it, because I actually am pretty tuned in to what really went on there. And what the urban legends are versus what they aren't. And it's always kind of a surprise to people when they go on these tours, because, what they find online isn't necessarily true about the building. And everything that I say is backed up.
Right.
I can't begin to tell you how many files I have at home. They're like file folders per year of information, day-to-day newspaper appearances that the Aztec did, and just the local newspaper. And so I kind of think that there must be probably a connection, because when there were no tours and there were nothing paranormal talk going on there were a lot fewer people claiming weird things happen. But the people that are claiming the paranormal things that are happening are not the ones that are taking my tour or hearing my information. So I don't know that I'm actually planting those seeds of suggestion. Maybe I am, but I'm not intending to. Actually, I'm trying to, let's start over with some of these ghost legends, and let's just, it's a haunted room. The story about a person dying there is not true, not based in any kind of evidence. So let's just do that. Let's acknowledge that, dismiss it, and let's start over and see what might be there.
Well, there's something to, my experience of the universe is whenever you pay attention to some aspect of it, I it's kind of like the force. It opens up and responds to you. Even if you just looked at energy that way, because I go for walks a lot by myself, and I really believe in this universe being alive, maybe kind of pantheism, I don't know. But I've had such unusual things happen. And a lot of times I get to take pictures of the writing I find on sidewalks that are very specifically connected to me. And I just feel there's this engagement. I don't understand it. I don't want to limit it. but it's real. There's something interacting with us. So if you go in with, you're steeped in that history, you're steeped in all that, even if you didn't talk about it, your energy's steeped in it, right? And so you get a response, is how I look at it.
One of the other things that I found interesting, probably since the last time we talked about the Aztec, is that they have a bar. It's been there for 30, 40 years now, in that same location. It's an island bar, so it's shaped like an O, and people, bartenders work inside of it, and people can sit all around it. It's very heavy, and I think it was probably moved there in the 60s, maybe 70s. So maybe 50 years being in that location. And there was a ghost that I heard about back in 2010, 2011, which the owner at the time had kind of nicknamed him Elmer, because there was a bar patron named Elmer, a real live person that used to sit on that southwest corner of that island, and that was his regular spot. But he died probably somewhere around 2007 or maybe even earlier. But he didn't die in the hotel, but he just stopped going. But sometime after that, like around 2010, people are seeing what looks like a man, and he's described as wearing like an old suit and maybe a newsboy cap, but he's seen in the dark by employees after the bar is closed. And so they'll get the key and they'll come back to unlock it and ask who the person is, why is he there? And no one would be sitting at that corner. And the owner had described Elmer as not being dressed in like a 20s or a 30s look, but he did wear a duckbill cap, like a baseball cap, but he would have it turned backwards, which could look like a newsboy cap in the dark, with the way the lighting is in that place. And he wore like a tracksuit or some kind of sweats instead of a suit. But again, if it's dark, something, your brain can fill it in of what it is. So it may be just Elmer. Now, I recently, just this year, when I'd pop in and see how everyone's doing at the hotel, I met a bartender who had a long history with the place, but he had only recently started working again as a bartender there. And he was saying that some people had claimed that they had seen a figure just out of the corner of their eye sitting on that southwest corner. And interestingly enough, I had a whole wall of photos that the owners did on their own. I need to actually put a sign so people know that these are my photos and not like historical photos.
Right.
And but there was a whole wall, but one of the pictures were stolen off of that wall, and it was the picture of the recreation of Elmer on that corner. It got stolen or disappeared. I mean, no one's come forward. I mean, the owners are like going, that's weird. And I thought, and one of the bartenders was like, yeah, I remember that picture. It's like people would talk about that. So I actually think that more than one person knows about this ghost seen on that southwest corner. Interestingly, ever since I heard that story in 2010, when I started, hearing sightings among employees about this, I would always, when that bar was open, I would always look at that southwest corner, and I noticed no one. I've yet to see someone sit there and drink. And I'll bring it up to like the bartender said, does anyone ever sit over in that corner? And it's like, no.
Wow.
It's like the only corner that no one ever like sits in. And I always think that there's maybe an energy there.
Yeah.
That just is like kind of off-putting. Because I'll segue to another location that I've been going to a lot, and that's the Warner Grand Theater in San Pedro. There are parts of that building now. I've done enough commercial investigations to kind of know what patterns are among people that go there to investigate. And there's always certain parts of that building that no one goes there. And it's creepy. And you think, that's exactly, they're there for an experience, but there's certain parts of that building that no one ever investigates. I always go, that's where you dive in. It's where you feel resistance. That's where you need to go.
Are
as
you
a
gonna do that
paranormal
then?
investigation. Yeah, I'm going to start kind of making people do that because they all kind of hang out in like clusters. When I say making, I mean I'm not going to like go, you do that or you get out, but I'm not going to do that. But you know, it's going to be, you know, just kind of guiding people. You know, it's a lot of it for some people that go on these events, and a lot of paranormal investigators as well. You're facing your fears,
Right.
to some degree. And what is fear? Most fear is fear. One of the biggest fears, I should say, is fear of the unknown.
Yes.
And that's where the paranormal falls right into.
Yes.
And
Well, I have to admit, I've chickened out of going somewhere before, but not everybody else did. When we went next door to that one place by David Owens, that is the creepiest place on that property. And even Michael had a crazy experience. And there was, if you go down, it's like a separate house next to his. And he got everybody to go over there one night, and I had just injured my knee. So I felt like I couldn't run if anything happened to me. And it was a pretty big group of people. And for some reason I said, nope, I'm not going down there. And Michael went down, and he said it was one of the most creepy places. And people had all kinds of experience, like somebody, I think, felt pressure on their chest, or so it really was probably the creepiest place along that block, actually, because I've been on the property where Sharon Tate murders. We snuck on one time years ago, and this was more creepy. And I don't know why. There were a lot of mirrors. Mirrors are weird.
Yeah.
Like they seem to capture energy somehow. So it's one of those places that have a lot of mirrors. And it was small. It was pretty small. And maybe I think some of those things are compact. It's like everything is. So I get that, but I think that it probably is good to, like I said, if I didn't have that injury, I don't know why that made me just feel really vulnerable. And I just, like I said, couldn't really walk very fast. And I felt, what if I'm the last person going up the steps? It grabs me or whatever, but I think you're right. It is about the fear of the unknown. And a lot of times there's actually scarier things in life that we're not afraid of, but we know what they are.
yes. Well, even when I did Haunted by History photo shoots and investigations, there were certain parts that you would feel a little resistance about wanting to go there and spend any kind of time there to investigate. And your brain will make all kinds of excuses, like, no, nothing will be there ultimately. But I really kind of encourage people that if they're interested in that's actually the place that you don't feel like you should be is probably the place you should be when investigating. And we're talking gut feelings, I'm not talking about legal issues like, trespassing and breaking and entering, that kind of resistance. I'm talking about like once you're in and you have permission and you're in a weird space, there's always going to be those little distant corners, little antechambers or something that will get overlooked. But these are like perfect places to actually investigate. Because, my experience is that in some cases, ghosts will, or something like that. I always kind of get a little embarrassed to talk about ghosts like they're absolutely 100% real, even though they are to me.
Right.
But it's very rare that something will come right up to you. It's great when it happens, but it's not often. A lot of times you get the sense that they're off a few ways, just kind of watching,
Right.
And in some cases it's what they confuse you, like you're in this location and you're a noise in another location, you go there, and then the noise happens in another location. You go there, and it's almost like they're leading you along, trying to get you to go somewhere or away from somewhere. But when it's kind of quiet, I think you do have to trust your instincts just a little bit and go for those places where there's a little bit of resistance that you can't quite explain.
Now, I was just thinking when you were talking about this idea of being afraid of the unknown, you have to wonder if ghosts are real, are they ever afraid of us? Certainly some seem timid from people's descriptions of trying to coax out like a child spirit or, but I've never really thought about, is it possible they could be afraid of something? How would I know what it's like to be until I die, And I might not even be a ghost necessarily. Not everybody becomes a ghost, it seems like.
Yeah. I don't even know if it's by choice or not, whether you are a ghost. I mean, I don't think anybody knows that. I mean, there's so many factors and different, ideas about it. Those that claim that they want to come back and try to communicate never seem to be able to do that.
Right.
Or the people there weren't receptive or sensitive enough to pick up on the clues that they were trying to get. I mean, they didn't have like audio recorders back in Houdini's time that could record. Instead, they were asking him to like fire a revolver or blow into a horn, things that I don't think ghosts can do.
Fire a revolver, that could be dangerous.
Right. I mean, seriously, that's what they did back then. It's like Houdini. That's what they did on the roof of the Knickerbocker Hotel. Oh. It's like it was a revolver with like a blank, or a horn. Please blow the horn if you're here. Well, you're outdoors and you're surrounded by a bunch of press. So it was more of a publicity gimmick than anything else. But I mean, seriously, back in the Victorian and Edwardian, they were asking ghosts to do an awful lot at seances, and rather than just have an audio recorder, or we just didn't have the technology back then, but we have it now. So who knows? Houdini could have been saying, hey.
Absolutely.
And no one would know.
Yeah.
Because he's not going to blow a horn. He never blew a horn when he was alive. What makes you think he's going to blow a horn when he's dead?
That's a good point.
I don't even know if I could blow a horn, one of those horns that they had there.
Right.
Because it doesn't look, the ones that I've seen, like the old ephemera seance horns, I don't know. I think I would have had better luck trying to play a kazoo, maybe. But I just don't think that those horns do they work at all? A trumpet? I can't really blow a trumpet. And it would take so much force.
Right.
And I think I think it was more for show. I think the ones that faked, the fake spiritualists back then, because there was a lot of them, they knew how to make those sounds.
Right.
And which is probably why they used that instrument to begin with. But I can't really remember what point I was trying to make overall, other than, again, just trust your instinct, go to those places in the dark and or light, and chances are, there's a reason why you have that feeling, that kind of radar. But always, when I do this, I also keep in mind that there are certain colors and there are certain designs of rooms that psychologically can make you feel uncomfortable. That has nothing to do with the paranormal.
Well, that's true. That's true. And then maybe also your own personal associations with things. You have to know if certain things kind of trigger you. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's like a certain room at the Aztec. It's in a little office area right behind the check-in desk. And like one of the people that works in the building just swears that he feels like he's being watched from in that room, and he just doesn't like to go in that room. And I've gone into that room plenty of times. It's not a comfortable room to be in. It's got like a lot of really old computers, and it's just kind of a room for kind of junk, and it hasn't been restored. And so it's not cleaned up. But when you're thinking, where would a ghost hang out to just kind of observe? That's about as good a place as any. It's not a comfortable room to be in. There are some psychological factors there that can make someone feel uncomfortable about that room. But, still, it's still worthwhile to investigate, just to say you investigated it.
Right. So how do you feel as an investigator about the idea of trying to help ghosts be free of a location. Like I think there's some, maybe more psychics and spiritual people that want to help release whatever's remaining, assuming it's a ghost, not a residual energy.
Right. Well, my views are going to be different than what a lot of people's are, and I'm not going to say that I'm right and everyone else is wrong. And I've certainly asked this question myself of others, but I don't know that you can really release them. I know that some people have, psychics have prided themselves and able to do that. Mm-hmm. And they'll do blessings and do shamanic exercises, and they'll do all of this stuff. I have friends that do that. And I don't know that it really... there's a skeptic in me that just can't embrace that. What I have seen in my own research, not just of buildings that I've investigated, but in other buildings as well, there seems to be patterns that pop up from time to time. And one of the patterns is that you can actually bring in a bunch of people to cleanse or try to send something to the other side, and maybe it'll quiet down a little bit. But as soon as there's some kind of alteration done, or even more so, when the business changes hands to another owner and they move in, it all just comes back again. Mm-hmm. So it means it never really left. Maybe it just kind of said, okay, we've reached a truce, you know, or things have quieted down. You've acknowledged that we're here. Mm-hmm. That's all we need. So I think that's what it really is all about. Now, I have a friend who grew up on a reservation, and I thought what she said, Melinda Moschino is her name, I thought what she said was actually resonated with me, and from an indigenous point of view, is that maybe the person doing this has to actually connect with the spirit, and then the spirit will understand that it needs to leave. Mm-hmm. And that too many people just never do that. They don't even know how to do it. They may go through rituals. They may get their degree from, some psychic camp somewhere. Follow what a celebrity psychic does and sells, and then think they can do it. But I'm not even sure the celebrity psychic knows how to do that kind of thing. So I think it has to be a very personable connection in order for it to possibly work. And that's why if it does work, and I'm open to the fact or idea that it might work, it's rare. Because I don't think there's that many people that know how to like internally connect like that. Mm-hmm. Spiritually connect, I don't know how you want to call it. I think it's just intellectual and emotionally connect. Because I really think emotion drives is the energy that we share with the living shares with the non-living intelligent energy. It's emotion. That's the connection. That's why when people get frightened, things seem to get louder, and it's drawing off that energy theoretically. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, I think emotion is really important, and it has to be very genuine. You can't really fake it, Right. And then, people in general have trouble with their own emotions. And also maybe you have to be willing to connect with any kind of emotion. And because maybe a spirit is more drawn to a certain emotion. That's an interesting idea. I mean, I don't really know what to think personally. I mean, I think you can't force any being to leave if they don't want to.
Right.
I mean, you can't do that with people. Why would you be able to do that with a ghost?
Right.
And maybe they have a reason of their own for being there, that whatever it is.
And a reason for it to leave, because in some cases they just leave. Mm-hmm. But I've always felt, I've never been a big fan of portals, because I don't think we quite understand what portals are. When I think portals in paranormal conversations, I think of like those Hollywood films where there's big circle, spinning circle, and sparklers going off, and then all these creatures just running through, like Jumanji, just running through, or Night at the Museum. Those are like, and I think most people think of portals that way. Mm-hmm. But I always felt that portals didn't really start coming into vogue until like maybe the 50s as a concept. Could have been earlier, but I mean, it was with the whole atomic age and atom age stuff where portals and science fiction writers,
right.
Where portals started to get talked about. And then it popped up in Star Trek and all this stuff. And,
right.
And in the paranormal, these portals appeared, and I always felt that psychics use portals as a cop-out for like when they go and bless and they rid themselves a house of a ghost, and then 2 months later, the person that paid them to do this calls them up and said, guess what? I unplugged my dishwasher and it's now running again. And cupboards and doors are slamming. What did you do? The psychic goes, oh, well, I definitely saw it. I put it onto the other side, but it must have been that portal that they come and go from. And my view is like, let's just use Occam's razor right here and let's just cut to the chase. You didn't send it away.
Right.
There's no portal. I've never caught an EVP where a ghost says, hold that portal for a second. I'll be right back. There's never any mention of it. Now, do portals exist? Possibly, but maybe it's more of like a battery charging station more than one of those circle, sparkly, Jumanji kind of things, Do
you think like portals are the same as vortexes?
Yeah, oftentimes
The
they
same
just, they're kind of,
interchangeable.
I think in a lot of people's minds that they are. I get told all this all the time. There's a portal in the basement of the Aztec Hotel. There's a portal in the first class changing room of the Queen Mary swimming pool, first class swimming pool. And I'm like going, the paranormal activity is fairly consistent in those places, and the voices and things seen are fairly consistent. So therefore, I think they're all always there. There's
Right.
not a, when I think of, if there's a portal, and it meets the definition of, if it's a portal and it meets the definition of what the people using the word is, you would think that it'd be like medieval knights would be able to come through.
Right.
It'd be like, time bandits.
Yes.
You'd get Robin Hood and, people from the medieval time. But no, it's always the same voices, the same personalities. So I don't think
point.
there's a portal at all in these places. The voices that I've picked up in the basement are the same voices I've picked up for years, sometimes in other parts of the building as well. Queen Mary, people are consistently either seeing or hearing a child, or military people or male voices yelling out, this and that. I mean, this stuff has been going off and on since the 50s. So it's not a portal where they're coming and going.
Right.
They're just
You'd
all
get
over
new
the
people.
place. Yeah. Even the ghost cat in the first class changing room pops up from time to time.
Huh.
But I think that it's even been photographed. But the ghost cat, I mean, because of its consistency and what people have felt and, when they've encountered it, I just don't think it's a portal. It's just always been there. It may not be in that area all the time. Maybe another part of the ship, down in the bowel, but it eventually comes back.
I think my issue with my experience is mostly with people I know that are mediums and psychics that talk about portals. And my issue in general, and this is my only experience, is how quickly they make an evaluation of it.
Yes.
Like that, and how one of the things I have in metaphysics, I'm like you, I'm still actually somewhat skeptical. And even in my own experiences, I go, Krista, that could be this. And I'm very open to the idea this could all be the mind. And isn't that amazing, actually? Like, I mean, if the mind can produce some of the things, it's extraordinary, right?
Right.
So that's my Buddhist influence. But that sort of, one of the things that bothers me in general about psychicism is just the immediate assumption, and that's it. on to the next thing instead of like, what else could it be? Or let me check about this and let me ask a few people. And, I want to, I just, even if you don't get the answer, I want people to go deeper. I just want them to dig a little deeper because, who knows what you'll find out.
It has to be process of elimination, and there's not that going on. I always make the metaphor. It's like going to a dentist because you have a toothache, and the dentist looks in your mouth and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. It's cancer." You go to another dentist, and it says, "It's a cavity. We'll just take care of it real quick." I mean, a lot of people go to the negative too quickly or the extreme too quickly. And there's too much extremes in the paranormal, and that's why it can't be proven, because even the non-believers are the ones that attack you or belittle you or think they're so right and you're so wrong. They're taking an extreme position too.
Yes.
And so you're having all kinds of different extremes. You've got, there's been a recent rise in, seems like, New Age churches and evangelicals where they're now saying that ghosts don't exist. It's either an angel or a demon. And they get these people just crazy that believe this stuff.
Ah, I didn't know that one.
And, I've heard people going, "You shouldn't be messing with that. There are no such thing as ghosts." And I go, "Well, what do you mean?" "Just demons. Just demons." And it's like, okay, it's like, thank you. So I'm just, we're getting further off track with the way the media is handling all of this. And I'm still waiting one of these days for it to reset, because it always does reset back to the middle.
Right.
And that's where I am. I mean, that's where everyone really, in my opinion, should be. I mean, it's okay to be Wiccan. It's okay to be all this other stuff. But, I mean, just to go to appease your 1.2 million followers, you have to go to an extreme to do that. And be in superficiality. Or I don't know how many. Go on YouTube and look up Griffith Park haunted bench, haunted picnic table.
Oh.
And look at all the paranormal investigations and all the paranormal people going, in 1976, two lovers were having sex on the bench, and they even give them by names, and this tree branch falls on top of them. And ever since, weird things have happened.
Killed them both?
Yeah, it was an urban legend.
Oh.
It was created as a Halloween prank in like 2007, I think.
Oh, wow.
And it was under a byline. Someone spoofed an LA Times newspaper online page. But the author was a guy named Norm Bates. And there was like a map off to the side where Mike Myers even had typos in the text. It was all these deliberate Easter eggs to let you know that it was a spoof and a goof, a Halloween goof. I'm telling you, go on and Google this.
I will
and look
after.
up paranormal investigations that try to take themselves real seriously.
Right.
And Norm Bates of the LA Times says, this picnic table is haunted. And so you get like YouTubers with like millions of followers, like Cody and whatever their names are. And they're doing this and going, "Oh, did you hear that? Did you hear that?" And it's like, oh, it's so... I mean, people just don't do their research and they just go with it. And they're just... I mean, if you like entertainment value, but I mean, I don't even find that entertaining.
Well, especially because there really are places that have some interesting phenomena. I mean, if you really, there's enough that probably haven't even been investigated. Like, I'd be curious to think, like, where do you think you would go that's really off the beaten path? Because, I mean, obviously people like to go to famous places. I get that, and some of them
free too.
They're also, some of them are beautiful. Like some of the places are gorgeous, or the history is just really interesting. But it seems like there could be off the beaten places that somebody could sort of create a niche around, and also just might be interesting.
Yeah.
So what would that be like? I mean, you think of like, okay, at least normally people go to asylums, hospital, where there's been battles, prisons, what else? Famous murders.
Murder sites, yeah.
Those are common anyway, at least from what
They're
I can
almost
tell.
cliche, yeah.
Yeah, there's got to be ghosts in other places.
Yeah, they're yes. A lot of ghosts in homes and sometimes in stores. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a tragic place for
Right.
there to be a ghost. I mean,
Right.
it's because again we're talking about emotional attachments, and not every emotion is fear, death, pain, misery, horror. Sometimes it's happiness.
Yeah, I remember we went on a ghost tour in Halifax that was well known when I was with Michael there. That was years ago. And I remember there was some location where it's known where a mother haunts the place because she's looking out for her kids. Like it's, she still wants to kind of take care of them, and I don't know, that could have been an urban legend, but at the same time, it was kind of nice not to have it just be a murder or, suicide. It was a protective spirit.
Yes, that's kind of the one about the wandering woman looking for her kids, or that's one of the big urban legends that's all over the world, but definitely in the Southwest of the United States has different names. So I don't want to go through all the different ones, but yeah, I was hearing that in Texas. I was hearing that in Southern California, and usually the first thing you look for when you hear these stories is, does it sound kind of like a morality tale at heart? The prostitute that's murdered, that was about to go straight, or the prostitute who was murdered or committed suicide after her boyfriend broke up with her while she's pregnant. The abortion, fake abortion clinics, and of course the woman that drowned her kids in the river and is now fated to look for them for the rest of her life. Hitchhiking,
the hitchhiking one, yes.
The hitchhiking one.
A lot of movies made out of that one.
Yeah, it's like, don't hitchhike at night, it's dangerous. And so now you've got the hitchhiker ghost, all over the country. Huh. And so, that's what you look at to begin with. Is it a morality tale at the heart of it? Because that's kind of how that's how a lot of ghost stories started. It's almost like Greek myths. How did we get fire? Well, gods came in and had an affair and got mad and blah, blah, blah. And Zeus threw his lightning bolt and missed and struck a tree and it caught on fire and they go, fire, or I think some of these stories are just kind of made up because it sounds good and there's a moral
That's a good point.
Seed planted in the ground. But no, I think there are some legitimate ghost stories that might have a moral message too. But it always helps to have some kind of real backing up of with actual historic facts. And then that's how you're able to fill it in a little bit more through ancestry and, I always try to do a psychological profile on people that lived at homes. What were their hobbies? There is an actress, I can't think of her name, but she was on Ellen a few months ago and she had a home in North Hollywood. And she told about a ghost in that home and her new home. And it was built in I think the 20s or 30s or whatnot. There was just enough information where I could look up where this property was. And she was claiming that it was the ghost of a Hollywood cowboy that's out and protective of her or whatnot. But no Hollywood cowboy, lived in that home ever. Instead, it was a home of a banker that loved to build model trains. Oh. And he was very into it. And he actually had such a great model train set that he would loan it out and it'd be part of exhibits. and he would bring Boy Scouts in there and whatnot. But this model train set was everything to him. And he had because they had built this home, they had built the basement especially large to fit this train set. And so I'm betting that that basement or wherever she's talking about being haunted, it's by this guy.
Right.
In his train set.
Right.
You know, these are the things that you look for. But once I found out who the longtime person was who I think died in the home, you start, looking up what they did, what their hobbies were. He was also, she was under the impression, this actress was under the impression that it was a Hollywood movie cowboy. Well, this man that lived there for 30, 40, 50 years with his wife and raised his kids there, he was also an amateur photographer. And what he did is he would take like little 16 millimeter cameras and he would try to make his toy train look realistic. So he's like filming it. So there is that kind of camera photography connection there.
Yeah.
That maybe she was kind of sensing, but she got the personality wrong. And that's what I always encourage is don't, you can have a psychic friend or whatever, and they go, oh yeah, I get certainly a vibe of this. And in LA, everything is, it seems like so many ghost stories are Hollywood connected. It's like, oh, it must be Marilyn. It must be Valentino.
There's no other kinds of ghosts.
Yeah. It's always an actor haunting, somebody that worked in the film industry. And maybe in a lot of cases it is. But
at the same time, like even today, I remember looking up that the biggest industry in LA is healthcare.
Yeah.
and I told somebody, they said, really? I said, yeah, I was a little surprised too. I knew that it was pretty big, but I didn't realize it was the biggest industry. And so, I mean, wouldn't that matter too? And maybe that's more recent, but I agree with you. But, I think it's that starstruck energy in the spirit world, wanting to see a star even dead.
Oh, yeah.
Especially.
In 1990, Peter James, who, after leaving the Queen Mary, where he was the psychic there for a while, he did like a year stint, maybe less than a year, at the Hollywood Roosevelt. And I read about what he was claiming. Oh my God. If you went on his tours, you didn't bring ghost hunting gear. You brought an autograph book because he ran into the ghost of Carmen Miranda, Humphrey Bogart, Errol Flynn. I mean, it was like a who's who. And he was doing seances up in the Gable and Lombard penthouse and promoting that urban legend that Carol Lombard's ghost haunts there. If you do the research, guess what? No. They were never there. They were at the Beverly Wilshire, for a while during the affair. But and then you start thinking about it. Once you start doing the history of the building, it's like that was like a popular tourist hotel in the 1930s, and it was overrun by agents, publicity people. A few stars coming in because they had to make personal appearances, not because they necessarily loved to, but because they were kind of required to make personal appearances. You had a few lesser-known contract players, the character actors. They would take a room there because it was central, and they could afford it to stay there. So, but throngs of tourists were coming in to Hollywood Roosevelt because of its location right across the street from the Chinese Theater.
Yes.
How the heck would two A-list stars like Clark Gable and Carol Lombard try to even think about hiding an affair by going to like one of the most populated places?
That's a good point.
It makes no logical sense.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where you have to think when you you have to be kind of like Sherlock Holmes. What sounds logical and what doesn't with these stories. Same with Marilyn Monroe living at the Hollywood Roosevelt. Seriously?
Isn't there a room that's supposed to be where she haunts?
Yeah, they're charging they charge $7,000 a night for the Gable and Lombard penthouse that they never stayed in, and they're charging like $5,000 a night for the Marilyn Monroe cabana where she supposedly lived.
Yeah, I think I worked there once. I did a
She never
readings
lived there. She was maybe there. I could only find 2 references, 2 occasions where she was even just there. Okay, just 2. Now think about the logic behind it. Had she lived at the Hollywood Roosevelt, we would have a lot of pictures of her, not just one of her at the swimming pool modeling toothpaste, which was one of the 2 occasions that she was there that I could find. So for her to live in the cabana, and it's funny, even the stories don't match up. Some people say that, oh, it was early in her career, like 46, 47, 48. Well, the cabanas weren't completed until 1950. So it can't be prior to that. You can't live in a place that wasn't built yet.
Right.
And then another sources were saying, oh, it was when she was married to Miller, the playwright.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Henry Miller would be at the Hollywood Roosevelt living with Marilyn Monroe in the late 50s? No. That would be like, he would hate that. Just absolutely hate that. So no, there's no evidence, no old registrations, no receipts, nothing that I'm aware of that she ever lived there. And I've asked Hollywood Heritage, I've asked other historians, I've asked Maryland historians. And that mirror, the Maryland mirror, not it. You know what it matches? It matches a description of what the original cabana mirrors were when they inserted like over 60 of them in the cabanas in 1950. They were full-length mirrors. And when you know, it matches the description. So I think the Maryland mirror was not owned by Marilyn Monroe, nor gifted to the hotel. It matches the description of the original cabana mirrors. And it makes more sense that it would be a cabana mirror because, again, Marilyn had barely any relationship with the Hollywood Roosevelt.
Wow, that is kind of surprising. I mean, I've never looked into the history at all, but now they've built a whole tourism around it. So,
well, that's what happened in 1985. The Roosevelt came out of a. We're running out of time here, but
yes, we are.
But real quickly, the Roosevelt came out of a really expensive renovation, and just in time to reopen for the 100-year anniversary of Hollywood. So they put a star of Natalie Wood in front of the hotel, and then they got Jimmy Stewart and all these people to sign, and had a big deal. But a few months later, they had the first ever, the largest of its kind Marilyn Monroe exhibit in the Chinese Theater and the Roosevelt, and that was so popular it eclipsed the Chamber of Commerce's 100-year centennial.
Wow.
So once they did that, realized that that was a moneymaker, that's when they went full force. And within a couple of years, the ghost story emerged, the mirror emerged, and all this stuff. So it was always intended to be a moneymaker for the Roosevelt.
Wow, I never knew that. And like I said, I think I was there
You
once
wouldn't know
for a
unless
party.
you wouldn't know unless you looked.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Well, I did want to mention how people can get your book. Is it on Amazon? Is that if they want to order your book?
Yes, you can order it on Amazon. It's actually on sale on Amazon right now. But you can also go to my website, bizarrela.com, and you can order it there as well. Etsy, I have an Etsy shop, Haunted by History. You can find it there as well. So, and then there's some like little niches and stores around that have it. It's at the Los Angeles Public Library gift store. It's at the Glen Tavern Inn. And I think there's a few other places where
And you also have some
is.
prints sometimes you sell too from
Yes.
your shoots.
Yes, Etsy and on my website. And I actually sell quite a few of them.
Yeah,
So
they're
it's-
beautiful.
I sold one just like a couple of days ago to someone in Ohio. So people from all over are buying them. It's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Especially when they write back and say it's beautiful.
They are. I mean, you're definitely a fine art photographer too. So you have
I try.
many
I wear many
talents.
hats.
You do, but you do them well. So thank you so much for coming back. I really enjoyed.
Sure.
I learned some new things as always from you, and thank you everyone for listening. Join us next time as we continue to explore the esoteric and the obscure together. Have a wonderful week.